Good morning, everyone. Here we have our charity. Let's begin the day. Today we're learning Chabad Hasidut. We're learning from a sefer which is called a book, which is called Likuti Torah. Likuti Torah, which was written by the first Rebbe of Chabad, the first of 7 Rebbes of Chabad. It was written about 250 years ago. Really, it was not written by him. It was compiled by his sons, his Hasidim, etc. And these are discourses to explain what Judaism really is and how we can come to love God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our might, and bring the whole world to do the same. What there is about God that's lovable. So here we have charity. Let's start off with charity. The main thing of Judaism is to give, not to receive. Here we have ready. Charity. Charity saves from death. Charity saves from all bad things. Charity brings the redemption, the gula, and that's what we're talking about now. Okay. So yesterday we got up to explaining what exactly are we missing over here in the world. It says that the Jewish people are in exile, and the prophet Isaiah said, "You don't have to worry about it, even though the temple will be destroyed." Isaiah was prophesying this already in the middle of the first temple. So for those of you who don't know, the Jewish people, they got out of Egypt, and as soon as they got out of Egypt, God told them to make a dwelling place for him. And when they got out of Egypt, before they came into Israel, it was a temporary dwelling. It was like a tent, and it was pretty intricate and pretty exact, but it was a tent that you could assemble and disassemble. But it was the general format of the Holy Temple. It had one room, which is called the Holy of Holies. That's where the tablets were that Moses received on Mount Sinai. And Moses commanded them to do this after they received the Torah. But the tablets that Moses received on Mount Sinai, that was in the Holy of Holies. And then there was an outer room, a chamber that was called the Holy, and that's where the menorah was, and the incense table, and the face bread table. And then more outside than that, external from that, was the big altar. That's where they would burn up the sacrifices that they sacrificed. And this accompanied the Jews all the time that they were Jews. All the time that they were Jews. And then the Jews got out into Israel, and they took this tabernacle with them, and it took different forms, like for the first 440 years. And then they built the first temple. And King Solomon, wisest man in the world, built the first temple, and he knew it was going to be destroyed. It says that he even built, maybe we'll even learn that today, he built a secret, deep, hidden chamber where the tablets were going to be put, because the ark was going to be put. So it's still there, somewhere down deep underneath it. He knew it was going to be destroyed. And because God set very, 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 very high standards for the Jewish people and all the Jewish people, and they all had to adhere to this high level, and they didn't. But the high level that he expected from the Jewish people, is essentially what man really is. That's what essentially man really is. Man is not essentially totally part of the creation. Man is only, you want to call it, half part of the creation. The other half of man is the creator. And that's the Jewish people. That's the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they're supposed to embody and accomplish what the first man did not do. So the first man was supposed to have revealed the essence of the creator and the purpose of the creation in the creation, by everything he did, everything he said, everything he thought. But we see that he didn't do it. Only 2,000 years later came Abraham, and he began the Jewish people officially. That didn't really, Adam is buried in the same place where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried, in Hebron. Adam, the first man, he's buried there also. And so it just shows that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're just carrying out this, plan that God made when he created the first man. And we're doing the same thing. That's what the Jewish people are now. But it's very difficult for the Jewish people to do this, because it's against a lot of times against what we call human nature. And that's one of the reasons the Jewish people are hated, because we're not just trying to convince the world, we're telling the world there's no choice, that the creator of the world who's creating them is telling them to go against their nature. So that's what the Rebbe is trying to explain to us over here. How we can attain, how we can accomplish what we were created for. In order to do that, we have to understand a little bit about what God is. About what God is. So there's a lot of religions in the world, and all of them, without exception, they misinterpret God. They misinterpret God. Either they say that God is a thing, God is a spirit, God is, sometimes they even manifests as an idol, as they pray to a statue, which a statue represents something higher, and that represents something higher. Or they say that God is just outside of the world; he just doesn't care, or he didn't give the Torah, or he didn't give, doesn't give the land of Israel, doesn't belong to the Jews. But God is not involved in these little things in the world. But that's a misinterpretation of God. The God of Israel is infinitely higher and more distant than the world, than all the other religions can possibly imagine, because all the other religions connect to God as being spiritual, and the God of Israel creates the spiritual. But at the same time, God cares, and he cares very intimately and deeply about every detail of this low, false, misleading creation. Every detail. It's very important to God, and every human being, tremendously important to God. And that's the basis of that comes from love. That comes from love. God cares and loves every creation. That's why he's creating everything, from love. From love. So the God of Israel, in other words, is creating everyone, cares about everyone, and loves everyone and everything, for that matter. But it's not unconditional love. In essence, it is, because God is creating everyone, but it's not unconditional. God has a lot of conditions within that love. The love doesn't stop, but some things can actually cause God to stop love. That's why God destroyed the temple, the first temple, the second temple, because he did not destroy the Jewish people. That was from love. The Jewish people didn't get the point, and God wanted to catch their attention, so he destroyed the temple. Okay, so for 2,000 years, God did not really succeed in catching our attention. And we can't be blamed, because, maybe he has to try another method. So this is the other method. The other method is Chassidut. The teachings of the Chabad Rebbe's bring the ideas of Kabbalah, which stress the infinite detail of God's creation and how God cares about each detail of his creation, and especially the importance of this world. That's what Chabad Chassidut does, especially the Chabad teachings stresses the upper worlds and how they are important, but even more so is this physical world. Okay, so it says, therefore, when the temple is destroyed and the Jewish people are scattered, so this physical world is not the way it's supposed to be, and that's what we're trying to fix up. Maybe this is a little bit sort of spiritual or something, or not understandable, but that's the fact. That's what the Jewish people are. And I think nowadays more and more it's coming to be revealed, because we see this thing about Jewish hatred, people hating Jews, and perhaps now in our generation, more than ever before in history, it's, first of all, this hatred is more, how do they call it, ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and it's more illogical. It's more illogical. Makes no sense. I mean, just take an example. I want to get into what we're saying, but I'm going to take 1/2 a minute. In Nazi Germany, for instance, between World War I and World War II, the situation in Germany was very dire. The economy was terrible. There wasn't work, etc. And they had lost the war. So the German people were very low. So there was someone to blame. Right? The Jews weren't really 100% Germans. Even the Jews that really wanted to be, really 100% Germans, but still, if you ask them, they'll say they're Jewish. So there's like, 0.001% Jew in every Jew. Right? A German Jew has a little bit that's like 100% Jew. A little tiny. There's one 0.0001, but that little point, that 0.00001% Jew, it's 100% Jew. That's 100%. He'll say he's a Jew. I'm a Jew. I'm not a religious Jew. I'm an atheistic Jew. I used to be a Jew. I was a Jew, but I converted. I'm a converted Jew. But nevertheless, they'll say they're the Jews. So the Germans had what to blame the Jews on. There was something there. The situation was bad, and they had someone to blame. But now the world is not bad. There's no situation. There's nothing bad in the world. Right? Nothing bad in the world. And the claims that are made against the Jews are just really. I mean, not only they're baseless, they're causing. Oh, shalom. Good morning. So nowadays, we see what exactly is the reason that everybody agrees. You know, the world, you got to hate the Jews, and they're on television, and they're the Jew haters, and everybody accepts them, and they don't. They're arguing about what's going on. So when it really boils down to it, if you strip all of these false reasons that were given that had maybe had a little bit of a basis in reality, so you get to it now that the reason for hating the Jews has absolutely no basis in reality whatsoever. And like I said, I think now in our generation, it's more obvious than ever before. More obvious than ever. People are actually, you know, they favor Hamas over the Jews, right? How do you say, the super liberal, decadent, you know, left, woke, whatever, they favor Hamas over the Jews. And Hamas says they're going to kill them, and the Jews don't. They're not saying they're going to. What's going on? Why? What is there inside of the Jews that makes everybody hate the Jews? What's inside of the Jews that make the Jews hate the Jews? What's going on? Why are they so? So the answer is God's love. God's love. That's what people hate the Jews for, because the Jews are living testimony to God's infinite love on one hand, and God's infinite care that he gave the Torah, and that he's trying to tell us how to be really human beings, or really Jews, or really how to be who we're supposed to be, to bring out all our potential. And people don't like that. People want to be their own bosses. Don't tell me what to do, especially if it's difficult. You can't tell me what I'm going to benefit from this. What benefit is there from being a Jew? The benefit is you're going to be able to serve God. Who cares? I want someone to serve me. And that's why I think this is when God gave the Torah, Sinai came Sinai to the world. And that Abraham was called the Ivri. He was on the other side. The whole world was on the other side. It says because they can't stand God's love. It's too good. God is too good. And going against God, God is so good. Going against God is like the most ridiculous thing in the world. And that's what everybody wants to do, is to go against God. What's the alternative to loving God? Loving yourself, being selfish. And we see what the selfish love brings to it. Just brings to, self-destruction in the end. Like this whole woke movement is just total self-destruction, right? Not getting married, not having children, not having this, not even this. Okay. Says the Rebbe, okay, so the alternative is God. So let's try to feel God's love. So the Rebbe says, let's talk about the Jews, first of all. The Jews are here in order to reveal how good God is, how God loves us, how God is creating everything. God is creating the spiritual worlds. God is creating the physical world. That's what every Jew is here to, as a living, how do you say, testimony. So the Rebbe says, okay, so we're Jews, right? So let's try to do what the Rebbe says. Let's be living testimony to what God is. So it says, okay, first of all, there's two steps. There's what's called Hoda'ah, and then there's Bracha. Hoda'ah means total surrender to the truth, even though we don't feel it. And Bracha means to reveal the truth that we find in the world. So I think that this is basically true in everything. Let's say any example, a person wants to learn to be a tennis player, or to play piano, or he wants to learn to be a professor in mathematics, whatever it is. First step, number one, is I don't know anything, but I came here to learn. I came here to learn. I came here to learn. I don't think I can make it, right? The teacher says, yes, you can make it. No, I can't, I'm a failure. It says, hoda'ah means you surrender yourself. You surrender yourself to something bigger than you. Bracha means that after you've achieved this higher level, as you manifest it in the world. Now, then you become a professional tennis player, and now you can play piano, or you can be whatever it is, a long distance runner, whatever. Then you can manifest these things. The same thing with that is that way, because that's the way it is with God. First of all, we have to admit we don't understand what God is. You think you know what God is, you're wrong. You're wrong. Even if you understand all these ideas, right? But still, what do you feel? You feel yourself. I exist. I'm certain that I exist. That feeling that you're certain that you exist, that is wrong. That's wrong. The fact is, the only reason you exist, I exist, everyone exists, is because we're being created by God. We are creations. You feel you're being created? No. I feel, here I am, I exist. The fact is, we're being created by God, and it's ridiculous not to do what God wants. He's creating us, but we don't feel it. So step number one is hoda'ah, surrender. We have to surrender our certainty that we exist and say, okay, that feeling I have that I exist and I'm calling all the shots and I'm doing whatever I want to, that is wrong. Okay, now let's, good. Okay, you got what you wanted, right? No, that's not what I wanted. That's just step number one. Step number two, now you can start to feel the reality of your creator, how infinitely good God is, that God is creating me. And God is creating me with a personality, with will, with desires, etc., etc. That's what's called, when I start to feel this, then I can act accordingly. That's called bracha. That's called making a blessing. Okay, the Jewish people, they are the example of this. They are the example of this. Let's see what we see. That's where we get up to. We get up to here. Oh, so it says, believing is not enough. Believing is not enough. Why? I believe there's God. I believe in God. I'm a religious person. Leave me alone. I believe there's God. I do the commandments, and that's it. Okay, I'm good. Okay, now talk to somebody else who's not religious. The service is no. That's not the point. Believing in God is very nice, but it's not enough. It's not enough. Why? Because here we go. Ready? It says, where do we get up to this? Yeah, it says, but to believe in God, just to believe in God and to surrender yourself for God to God, that is far away. To say, yes, I believe it, I am a creation, I'm created by God. It says, Avo. I want to get up to the other. Also, we say, Modim anachtulach. And this we say, we are surrendering ourselves to you 3 times a day in our prayers. That the truth is, Kamohu, like God, He sees the world. Kol echad ve'echad Israel, and each and every Jew has this inside of them. That's why the Jews are called Yehudim. Yehudi comes from the word Hodaya. Hodaya means total surrender to God. And that's what I say. You can see in a Jew, you ask a Jew, I brought this in a lot of times, I know, but I think this is the quintessence of the example. I saw an interview that they interviewed Trotsky. You know what Trotsky was? Trotsky was like this super murderer. I mean, he was just a murderer. He was the head of the Red Army, and he directed and instrumented the whole, one of the big, takeover of the communists over over all the other factors, the factions in Russia that were there before. And he was a very, 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 very atheistic Jew. So I saw an interview with him. He was a tremendously intelligent person, a tremendously devoted and driven person. He knew like 15 languages fluently. He was just a very talented person. So they asked him, are you Jewish? Because one of the big things Stalin eventually killed him, and one of the things against him was that he was a Jew. You can't trust a Jew. Said, are you Jewish? So he said, and he wasn't religious at all. I mean, he was anti anything. By him, communism was reality, and Judaism was just, it was like an appendix operation that didn't work. A little bit was still left or something. So they asked him, are you Jewish? So he should have said, no, I'm a communist. No, he didn't say that. I saw it. He said, listen, I guess you have to say that I'm a Jew. He said, I'm an atheist Jew, don't believe in Judaism, I'm this Jew, but I guess you have to say I'm a Jew. And he could not deny the fact that that's called modim. That's the Yehudi. That's the Jew inside of every Jew. That's the Jew inside of every Jew. Modim, every Jew surrenders himself that the truth is the way that God wants, not the way that I want. Who kamosha who? It's like God says, and every single Jew has this. But in calls them nevertheless, hoda, this idea of surrender to God. Him rachok. Let me make this bigger over here. Bigger, I lose the place. Here we go. But in calls them nevertheless, hoda, this surrender to God, whom rachok is far away. Hainu, namely, sheba'atzmo eno eitzel the samach lezeh. I am not close to this. I admit that I am wrong and God is right, and just leave me alone. But the fact is I feel inside of myself, deep down, that I exist. What's the question? Of course, I exist. I exist independently. Here I am. I'm just doing God a favor. Like I just believe in Him. Okay. So that's what we say. I admit myself. I admit that God exists. I surrender myself to God. But the fact is, this is just like faith. Faith is atera. It's just like a surrounding level. Therefore, it says in the Talmud, it's brought, and it's a book called Ayin Yaakov, and in Brachot, it says that a thief, maybe just a Jewish thief, before he goes in to steal, he calls out to God. He believes that God will help him. But what's God helping him do? The opposite of what God wants. So you believe in God? Of course I believe in God. Then why are you stealing? Because that's my expertise. I'm a good thief. But it's against the Torah. You got a good point. That's a good point. So excuse me, but I have to make my thievery because it's getting late. The police are going to come here soon. So excuse me, right? God, please give me success in my prayer, in my answer my prayers. I want to steal money. I want to, please give me success in my thievery. I promise I'll give 10% to the synagogue, 20% to the synagogue, okay? And he goes and steals. And sometimes it even works. How could it be? So it says, because surrendering yourself to God means you surrender yourself to God, but you still feel, right? Surrendering yourself to God is more negative than positive. You negate yourself. You don't feel anything good. That's why a lot of religious people, you see, especially the children, that they stop doing Torah and the commandments. They stop because they don't see anything positive in it. They see something positive when they get together with their friends and they go around. Then they feel good. Then they feel themselves. They feel good. What's the alternative to that? So the alternative, that's blessing. Blessing, that means revelation of God. And we have to remember again that God is not a spirit. I mean, God certainly manifests himself spiritually, but God is our creator. He's creating everything. God is infinitely, infinitely real. If you think that you are real, you are right. But that's because God makes you that feeling, gives you that feeling. That's what's called a blessing. A blessing means revealing godliness. Like it says that when Yishmael, Kohen Gadol, it was a high priest, he would go into the Holy of Holies, he would hear a voice come out and it would say, Yishmael, bless me. Because God created the world in such a way that the world hides over God. And bless me means God is saying, bless the aspect of God in the world, that godliness in the world is more evident to the world. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, that we say, bless, we ask God, blessed God, bless God from the world to the world. What do you mean, God bless from the world to the world? It's also a sentence in Psalms, was it? It's drawn down from the concealed worlds, from God's essence until the revealed world. How do we do this? By means of the Torah. God gave the Torah in the world. The Torah is pure godliness in the physical world. It's pure godliness in the library. It's a book in the library. You can take the Torah out. The Torah is pure godliness. Torah by means of doing the commandments. And the Torah, so don't think that the Torah and the commandments are just like any other book or any other action you do, any other ritual. When a Jew does Torah, when a Jew learns the Torah, when a Jew does a commandment, Mamshechim, it draws down, revealing godliness in the soul. It says, like it says in the Sifri, in one of the Midrashim, that from the Torah and the commandment, you recognize the one who spoke and created the world. Now, your person can ask a question, come on, what possible connection can there be to all these words of the Torah and these rituals that we do? We put a box on our arm, a box on our head, a thing like that, to the creator of the universe. What the universe is real, and Judaism is a part of the world. It's another religion. Says the Rebbe, that's what you think. That's what it seems. That's what God wants you to think. And God also wants you to overcome this feeling, this thought, this false certainty. Because in fact, we're being created, and in fact, we're being created for a purpose. And in fact, we're being created constantly for this purpose. And the purpose is the Torah and the commandments. First of all, they have to be loved. You have to love God with all of your heart. Afterwards, when you say Shemona Esrei, and when you pray the standing prayer, there is 18 blessings. You draw godliness down. Baruch Atah Hashem. Blessed are you, God. That between this level of surrendering yourself to God and admitting I don't really know what's right, my feelings that I have about God, I have to not pay attention to them. My feelings that I have that God is far away and that God doesn't exist, my feelings that I certainly exist, I am certain that my existence is a real existence, that's all there is. That feeling you have to ignore, that's hoda'ah. Between this feeling of negating yourself to the level of blessing, so there's things in the middle. There's what's called love. Loving God with all of your heart. That's in Shema Yisrael, you see. And this idea of love, we're going to see, is by means of prayer and by means of the commandments. Especially prayer is the preparation for the commandments. Surrendering yourself to God, that's step number one. Step number two is loving God, appreciating God, thinking about what God is, considering deeply, is this really true, what this rabbi is saying, that God is creating me? I'm being created. I don't feel this. I don't feel this. Well, the fact that you don't feel it is that I that doesn't feel it, forget about that. I don't pay attention to that. At least we're not talking about a long time. 10 seconds. Consider that God is really creating you. Consider that God is really good. Consider that God is creating this whole amazing, beautiful world with all the constellations and all of this and all the subatomic particles and all these things. Consider that. If you start considering it, it starts to feel real, then that becomes love. Then that's a positive surrender. Hodah is, if you want to say, it's a negative surrender. It's negating yourself. And love means appreciation. You're appreciating God. It's sort of like get married. It's something like getting married. You get married at first, no matter what you thought before you got married about who your wife is, a lot of times you get married and suddenly you realize, when I was alone, I could do what I wanted to. I was the boss. And now I get married, you realize you have to make a partnership over here. So sometimes you just have to sort of surrender yourself and just sort of knock yourself out. Your wife does something that makes you mad. The wife does something that frustrates you. You have to just keep quiet. Don't open your mouth. Then after a while, you can start to appreciate the other person. Because the other person, that's called love. And after the love, appreciation, then it's a working a partnership. That's called making a blessing. A working partnership. The same thing with God. First of all, you have to sort of negate yourself, take away a little bit from your self-love. That's step number one. Step number two is starting to, appreciate God more and more, to come to love God. And then the commandments, that draws down God in the world. Okay, it's not so easy. To come to this level of love is not as easy as the Rebbe writes. In order that a person can come to this level of love, and that's what the Rebbe is going to tell us, by means of hitbonenut. You have to contemplate deeply. Now, hitbonenut, we've talked about this before, is not meditation. Hitbonenut, the word hitbonenut is contemplation. Contemplation, generally speaking, means solving a problem. a very personal, important, urgent, pressing problem. Hitbonenut. Something you can't take your mind off. Right? Hitbonenut, thinking, what am I going to do? What should I do? Right? I'm stuck in whatever, some country. I'm stuck, and they stopped my plane flight, my plane, the company, it stopped service, and I got to get to my son's wedding. How am I going to get there? What am I going to do? Sits and thinks, maybe I'll call up my friend. Maybe he knows. I don't know. You're saying a lot of people are on the same problem. He says, well, you can take a boat. You take a boat to here, and then from there you take a helicopter to over there. And from there you can take a submarine. You take the submarine, and it goes over to here. And then after that, you can catch a plane, and that plane goes over to here, and then you have to swim over there, and then you go this, right? That's stupid. I'm not going to do that. There must be something else. But you're sitting and you're thinking. You're trying to solve a problem, a very personal, urgent problem. That's hitbonenut. So here we have a problem. What's the problem? We're saying that God is creating us. God is the only real reality. God is telling us what's really good and what's really bad, why we're being created, right? And I don't feel it. I don't feel it at all. You have to say, is this really true? Is this really real? I mean, could it be that my whole life is just being, my GPS as far as life goes is off killed? It's being programmed by my enemy. So am I whatever I want, whatever I think is wrong? Maybe it's not. Maybe yes. Think hitbonenut. We got a big problem. Right? God is creating us. God has a plan, the Torah. God is the only real reality. God is creating me to feel that I'm real. God cares what I do. He's really important. God will help me to do the right thing. He really cares. And I don't feel any of this at all. I don't feel it at all. Is it true? So maybe it's just not true. That's it. Okay, that's it. It's not true. But if you think maybe it is, then you start to contemplate, how can this be that I don't feel it? God is creating. That's hitbonenut. And this hitbonenut especially is Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, it's a sentence in the Torah, next week's Torah portion. And in Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Vaed is a sentence that was added on by the rabbis in Shema Yisrael. Okay, so again, what is Shema Yisrael? I know we've said this a lot of times. What is Shema Yisrael? Shema Yisrael is six words. It's a sentence in the Torah, and it's followed by a whole paragraph in the Torah. 6 words. Shema means think, understand. Shema means to understand. Understand Jews, understand Israel, Jews. God is our God. God is one. And then it says you should love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might. Between this Shema Yisrael and loving God, there is a sentence that the rabbis put in. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Vaed. Blessed is the name of the glory of his kingship forever and ever. We say that sentence. What does it mean? What are we supposed to think about? Why? The whole creation, this is what we're thinking about. The whole creation, who yesh mi'ayin, is something from nothing. That's what you have to think. Shema. Think that the whole creation is something from nothing. Or in simple language, I am nothing. When I say I am nothing, I'm saying this to me. It's not that you're supposed to sit in the house and think, before person think Rabbi Bolton is nothing. You can also think that, but that's not going to be personal. You have to think, yesh mi'ayin means that the whole world is here. It's a world, but it's being created from absolutely nothing. In other words, the building block of the world is nothing. It's not atoms. It's not spirit, atoms. It's not spirit. It's not whatever it is, a vacuum. It is nothing. That's what the world is being created from, is nothing. How could that possibly be? So the answer is it's a miracle. It's a miracle. I'm being created from nothing. You're being created from nothing. But as we said before, but God is creating us, so he cares about us. He's creating. But we're really, from our point of view, we got the whole thing wrong. We got the whole thing wrong. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to think that the world is created something from nothing. What does it mean? Come on. Like it says, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Vaed. Blessed is the name of the glory of his kingship forever and ever. What does it mean? What is creating the world? Malchuto Masha Nikra Melech, the fact that God is a king over us. He's not God's essence. This is what is enlivening the worlds. And also God's, it says, his dictatorship, This is even lower than his kingship. That's more impersonal. Shehu Moshel Balkorcha, that God forces us. Shalom b'tovatan, not necessarily do what we want. This is the external of God's kingship. So it's a very, very complicated process, the Rebbe is trying to say, because we're talking about reality. So the reality that we feel is a very, 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 very false reality. Then there's spiritual worlds, which are above us. That's a little bit more real, but it's also only a creation. They're also only creations. Why are the upper worlds more real? Because they feel that they're creations. They feel. That's why the angels are all burning up. So there's levels and levels and levels and levels of concealment that God makes in order to create this. This does not contradict the fact that God personally is creating us. This is just the way he does it. The way he does it is by means of all these different levels and worlds and veils and things like that. Hu b'chol dor v'dor. This is in every generation. What does it mean? There are some generations which are evil people, and some like the generation of the Mabul, and nevertheless God creates them. That's called God's memshaltacha. That's God's dictatorship. Shalo kiblu o malchuto. There's whole generations that they did not recognize God at all. Nevertheless, there was drawn to them tremendous life from God's memshalta, from God's dictatorship. In the earlier generations, like before ours, they all recognized God. Everybody, only like about 300 years ago, from 300 years ago to now, there started this idea that there's no God. There's no God. Before 300 years, there was no such thing as atheists. I mean, maybe you can look around and find, I could be, even the Greeks, they worshipped all these different gods, and they weren't atheists. They weren't atheists. There was no such thing as atheists. Right? Everybody believed in God, some sort of a spiritual power, some sort of a force that's above them, right? The generation of the flood, they purposely rebelled against God. The generation of the dispersion, the Tower of Babel, they knew there was God, but they rebelled against him. It was fun to rebel against, right? You can go and spit in the king's eye. As everybody, hey, see, there's the guy. He's one that spit in the king's eye. You feel you accomplished something. Right? So there were generations that went against God. How is it that God created them? God is creating them and they're rebelling against God. How can it be? Because there's a lot of aspects of God. There's one aspect that's God is a king. That's over people who want to be ruled by him, accept the king, coronate the king. And then there's people who rebel against the king. God becomes a dictator. That's called memshaltacha. This is in Psalms, Psalm 145, whatever it is. It's in alphabetical order, so this is mem, right? And your kingship, your dictatorship. But nevertheless, all of the worlds, Elyonim, the upper worlds, the lower heavens, upper heavens, lower heavens, all these levels are levels of pleasure. Because what do we say? God is creating the world from love. When you feel love, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to feel that you're loved. Feel someone appreciates you. Well, God really appreciates us, but we don't feel it. So the upper worlds, we feel this love a little more, this pleasure. And the higher heaven is even more. Infinitely more pleasurable than any pleasure you can get in this world. That the rabbis say, Mutov l'daine, it is worthwhile to suffer in hell for, I don't know, what was it, 7 years or something, in order to go to heaven. It says that one moment in hell is like 70 years of the tortures of Job. Right? So one minute is so tremendously, and it's worthwhile to suffer years in hell just in order to go to heaven. Even the low, right? Even the lower heaven. And there's also the upper heaven. That's even more pleasures. And there's even higher levels without any end. That all comes from God's kingship. This is a whole tremendously, infinitely complicated creation that God made, levels and levels of reality, each one closer and more, how do you say, and more sensitive, perceptive of God's love. Higher and higher levels of reality and reality. And we're on the bottom of the totem pole. We're on the bottom of the bottom. Right? Why did God make this terrible thing? Why did he put us in such a terrible situation? It says, because we're like a lever. It's like a lever. You want to lift something else up, so you go from the bottom, and you put the jack under the lowest part of the car and you lift the thing up, right? You lift it up. That's where we are. We Jews are down here in the lower, where there's totally no godliness revealed. And when we do start to reveal it, then you get into idolatry. Idolatry is spirituality. You mistake the spiritual worlds for God. That's called idolatry. But nevertheless, God is creating everything. He's creating the idolatry. He's creating the idols. He's creating generations that went against him, like the generation of the flood. He creates that by a means of an aspect of God, which is called dictatorship, memshala. And therefore, Nikra, Bria, therefore the creation is called something from nothing. Why something from nothing? Because the creation of the worlds is from a level which is ayin ve'efes. Okay. Because the upper, now listen, you have to listen to what the Rebbe is saying over here. The world is called something from nothing. Why? Because we feel that we are something. We feel that we're something. But really, we come from a whole tremendous process of spiritual worlds which are infinitely more real than we are. But compared to God, those worlds are also nothing. In fact, the upper worlds, they feel that they're nothing. So therefore, that's why the angels are burning up. They feel, how am I existing? I just love God. Therefore, the creation, this world is called Yesh because we feel that we're Yesh, and we're being created from the upper, through, by means of the upper worlds, which are nothing. Because the creation of the worlds is from a level which is like nothing compared to God. Shehirak Enurak Ziv is just like a little ray of godliness. This is God's kingship. Like it says in the Bible, in the beginning of the Bible, God spoke and created the world, right? He spoke. So he said, let there be light. So from this word, let there be light, there came all of the spiritual lights and all the physical lights and everything from one word of God. So, I mean, that a word is not very, very comparable to a person, right? Take any person in the world and say, okay, do you remember what you said in 1994, 3:45 in the afternoon and 5 seconds? You remember what you said? I don't know. I said, well, let me play it back to you and you remember. You remember that? 1 second. That wasn't me speaking. That was something. How does the guy know? How could he possibly? You can't tell him. Okay, I'm going to give you a little hint. You tell me from this hint, I want to know the name of the speaker, the gender of the speaker, the IQ of the speaker, the age of the speaker, the place of the speaker, the history of the speaker. All right, here's the hint. Ready? That's it. But that's ridiculous. I can't tell anything. Well, the whole world is created from, so to speak, that was just an example. The whole world was created from just one word of God. Let there be light. That's it. And there's light. You know what light means, right? Light means consciousness. Light means how do you say, spirituality. Light from one little word. So we can't tell what God is at all from the world. The world is created, but it comes from God. Like a king, that the name of the king goes out to the whole country, right? You have the king has a huge army, right? 1 million men, and they're all smart and they're all intelligent and powerful and able and dangerous and everything like that. And all of a sudden, someone stands up in front of them, comes over the loudspeaker. A proclamation from the king. Ooh, king. Right? Everyone will wear one white shoe and one red shoe. And the message, yes, everybody runs, all 1 million people, they forget about their personalities and their power. The king says, that's it. So it says that's the whole world. One word of the king created the world. But Hine calls it all this. This is only in regard to the Seder Ishtalshlus. This is the way things were created. But and that's the upper worlds. But in this physical world, which is the bottom of the totem pole, like we said, we have free will. And when we decide against all odds, we're 1 billion to 1 that we're going to do it, but there is that one. And that one, that's this, I am a Jew. But that's the little Jew inside of the Trotsky. Yes, I'm a Jew. Al Yidei Tshuva, Maisim Tovim, by means of Tshuva and good deeds, By means of that, we can draw down the essence of God into the world. But also, even more, you see, Malibo, that in the upper world, when you go to heaven, you can't go up you can't raise yourself up. You can't change things. You're in the system. There's the levels which are set. When a person dies, there's what's called kafakela, then there's going to hell, then there's the lower heaven, then there's the upper, and then there's what's called the river of fire, and that enables a person to go to the upper heaven, according to what a person was, how he was in the world. That's what's the level of mamalik homing. But in this world, in this physical world, a person can change from one end to the other immediately in 1 second. Dina hakodesh at the isha, that the law is that a man who marries a woman, right? If I marry a woman on the condition that I was born in Georgia. Well, the fact of the matter is I was born in Detroit. It's a lie. If I marry a woman on the condition, I say you are married on the condition that I was born in Georgia, and it's discovered that in fact I wasn't, it's a false marriage. It's a false claim. The basis of the marriage is false. The woman is not married. What if I marry a woman on the condition that I am a tzaddik? It says a tzaddik. I marry a woman on the condition that I'm a tzaddik, right? I'm a Jew, Trotsky. I am Trotsky. I hate bringing up his name, but that's the best example I know. Right? Trotsky, he was a totally non-religious. The guy was a murderer. Who knows how many people he murdered? And it is right. And it says, and he marries a woman, a Jewish woman. Says, you are married to me on the condition that I am a tzaddik, right? If he says I'm married to me on the condition that I was born in Georgia, he wasn't born in Georgia, he was born in Russia. It's not good. But if even more so, he's not a tzaddik. He's a big Russia. He never did any commandments, never did anything good. He marries a woman on the condition that he is a tzaddik gomer, mikodesh, she's married. Even if he's a Russia gomer, even if he's a totally evil person, how can that be? Because maybe he had a thought of tshuva. And if there's one thought, means he changed direction. He changed direction. Maybe now it's going to be different. At that moment that he had married her, that he said, "Will you marry me on the condition that I am a tzaddik?" She said yes. At that second, maybe he really was. Because there's a ray of what's called soviv kalmim, from the essence of God in the world. That shows how much God cares about this world. That's because in this world, we, so to speak, can have an effect on God. That's the idea of prayer. It's better one moment of tshuva and good deeds in this world than all of the upper worlds. And therefore, we can have love for God with all of our soul. And this is where we're going to finish today. And tomorrow we're going to come back to do more. This is talking about the Jewish people as they are normally. When there's a temple, when everything is working, they still have to work, and they have to work hard. Right? They have to work, and they have to work hard. But the system works. System works. But now we're in exile. We're going to see. But now we're going to see. That's going to be next week. All this is when everything is the way it's supposed to be. But when the world is not the way it's supposed to be, we're in exile, and that we're going to talk about more, God willing, tomorrow.